Well, it's 1 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and get started. I'll go over a couple quick things, but I think if it's your first time to Planning Commission, can you please raise your hand? Okay. Well, for all of you who have joined us before, glad you're back. We'll go through the agenda pretty quickly. At times it moves really fast. Other times it moves slow, but Planning Commission has received this in advance of today's meeting, and Planning Commission's had the opportunity to review it before today's meeting. And so oftentimes if there's a staff recommendation to approve and there's no opposition present, we'll actually take action on it without hearing from the applicant or staff. And so if you're here and you're in opposition to one of the cases on the agenda, I'll ask in each case if there's any opposition. Maybe you're here and you've just got some questions or you've got some concerns. You don't necessarily think of yourself as opposition. That's fine. I need for you to raise your hand when I ask if there's any opposition here. The reason for that is that if you want to talk, we wouldn't otherwise know that you're here and that you want to speak on the case. In each case, the applicant will, when we do hear from staff, we'll first hear from staff. They'll share the presentation. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to come up. They'll have 7 minutes to present the reason for their request. And then the opposition will have a total of 9 minutes to ask any questions or make any statements in regards to why they're opposed to it. And then the applicant will come back up to the mic and have 2 minutes to respond to the points that have been raised by opposition. All the conversation that takes place today will be between the folks here on Planning Commission and the person at the podium. When you come up to the podium, please make sure to state your name and address for the record. And I think that covers everything. This is a really light crowd, and it's a fairly light agenda, so hopefully we'll make some good progress and get you out of here.
Mr. Chairman, we have one case that's on the agenda but has been withdrawn. It's under new business, item number 1, case 2024-37 at 1155 Dagnan Lane.
Yeah,
that's been withdrawn by the applicant. Will not be heard today.
Okay, so just to reiterate, that case on 1155 Dagnan Lane, we're not going to hear that case today. So if you're here in regards to that, you can leave because we're not going to hear it today. All right. First case under subdivision plats and variances is case SD 2024-0021. And this is lots 1 through 43 located at 7038 Ooltewah, Georgetown Road. And staff is recommended to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2024-0023. And this is a preliminary plat for Greenwood Road, lots 1 through 19, located at 7310 Greenwood Road. Staff is recommended to approve. Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case is SD 2024-0024, and this is a preliminary plat for Fraser Addition Number 2, lot 76 through 86 and 91 through 94, located at the 700 block of Franklin Street. Staff is recommended to deny. Is there any opposition present? And is the applicant present? You plan to speak on that? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think so. We skipped number 3, but we'll go ahead and, since you read this one off, we'll go ahead and.
What? Hey, which one do you think we skipped, or which one did I skip?
I think you may have an older agenda, but it should be 2024-23 Greenwood Road, lots 1 through 19.
Was there 22 on the agenda?
There was 22.
I believe he read 23. I believe 22 is the one we skipped because it was not on my agenda.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, 23 I did read.
Okay, go back.
22. Can you read the?
Sure. SD 2024-22. It's a preliminary plat, 3 Gorgeous Farms, lots 1 through 49, and community lots. It's an 11,000 block of Worley Road, tax map parcel 045 04501. We had a recommendation to approve.
Is there any opposition present? We have a motion to approve. And it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Sure.
On to SD 2024-0024.
This one here is it's a preliminary plat. Here's on the screen. You see there's existing lots of record in this location. Bisecting the middle of this subdivision plat is an unopened right-of-way connecting to another unopened right-of-way in North Chattanooga. And so these are lots of record, just trying to reestablish some of the lots of record. But on the plat, the road, proposed road, which is, I guess, Franklin Street, is being extended. It's not connecting to Woodland Avenue because Woodland Avenue is not a city street either. And they're showing what looks to be like a cul-de-sac, not even close, like a hammerhead. Into the lots, makes those lots really unbuildable. The way the right-of-way is shown, so staff recommended deny based on comments we received from Transportation Department. Transportation Department would like to see that road connected all the way through, or those lots removed from this plat. CDOT does not like that hammerhead. Again, it divides lots 82 and 84 into really, they're bisected by that driveway or hammerhead. So staff recommends to deny this plat. And here's again the overview of the entire area being replatted. Is towards just to the right. Let's see if I can get my laser pointer on. There ain't questions right through here where this right of way does not connect. There is no pavement there, so these lots wouldn't have any frontage. And the way they're showing it on this plat is a hammerhead right of way. If you look, lot 82 comes around, has right of way, and then a little slip of land here. CDOT doesn't like the hammerhead and doesn't like the way this is laid out. They would prefer to connect to Woodland Avenue.
Mr. Schultz, you've said a couple times CDOT doesn't like, which I can appreciate. I have many opinions in regards to things that I like and dislike.
All right.
And frankly, oftentimes as I look at applicants' requests, I don't like what I see. Is there actually something more than just not?
It's
liking
not like it's requirements. You cannot have hammerhead in the city of Chattanooga.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Just be
So
clear,
under subdivision regulations in the city of Chattanooga, you cannot build a hammerhead.
Yeah, they prefer cul-de-sacs or that road connect all the way down to Woodland Avenue. Again, Woodland Avenue is not opened either. The issue is this section right here.
But this is already platted.
Yes, and they're replatting this. It's platted, but you can't get building permits because that road does not exist. You go back to the aerial map.
Right.
They're reconfiguring one of the lot lines here, so it's being replatted. These lots do not exist. They can't get a building permits because no physical pavement exists.
Sure.
And down this other end, they're reconfiguring those lots as well. So it is a replat, but the road there's no pavement.
Okay.
I think that's the whole issue from CDOT's perspective. Can't have hammerheads, got to have a cul-de-sac or connect the road all the way through.
Gotcha. Mr. Leem.
So could they put the hammerhead in that Woodland Avenue unopened right away?
Well, they wouldn't
As
need to do a hammerhead at that point. Just build the,
There's no road there. though,
yeah, they have
correct?
to build something down, some kind of turnaround, whether it's a cul-de-sac or build that road.
I don't know if they have the right of way for a cul. I guess
Oh,
they
it's
have to
a
give,
50-foot right of way.
cul-de-sac wouldn't fit. You'd have to give up some of those other lots. But anyway, just curious, because if you're anticipating Woodland Avenue being open at some point in the future, you would think some type of hammerhead would facilitate that in the future, although that may not be in the
Right.
short term.
Well,
Just a question.
The other issue is you just take these lots off this plat. You don't show those as lots being platted by this plat.
Gotcha.
You just remove them from this portion.
Okay. Mr. Chambers.
Well, Thank you. Rocky Chambers, CEG office location 400 East Main Street here in Chattanooga. And thanks for the presentation there. Yeah, as was mentioned, all of these lots were platted. I don't know, they're all lots of record per plat, with the exception of the three we really care about, which is down on Franklin Street. And then those were reconfigured per deed and not by plat. And so city staff asked us to reconfigure those 3 lots via plat. And so that's why we're here today. And frankly, we don't really care about those lots up at the top. And if we need to remove them from the plat, we're happy to do so.
But I still think, just Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, if you do remove those, you're going to have some type of turnaround. Was that mentioned at that meeting about a turnaround? If you just even remove them from the plat?
So this is the first time I've heard, and I don't see it in staff's comments here either, that turnaround wasn't allowed. This has been a project that's ongoing. We've been in permitting for 4 or 5 years now, working through all of the issues with staff, with transportation, with all the staff. And this is the first I've heard of that requirement. Putting the intersection further up doesn't make physical sense because it's about 40 feet in elevation, different from what we're showing there at our turnaround and the other street. So we can't physically build that connection to that unopened right of way.
Mr. Chairman, if there's some uncertainty about it's not CDOT is a part of Public Works, and Ross Picairn is the Public Works Director. And if there's some uncertainty about what their position is, I'd say just table this and let them come in next month and they can talk to Planning Commission about their recommendation. It's kind of difficult for Brian and I to have to defend the Public Works Department. And so I would say if they have a position on it and they haven't communicated it to the developer, just table it and let them come in and talk to the Planning Commission.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to lean in on what Dan stated. Rocky, are you okay with maybe delaying this or deferring this 1 month to have that conversation with Public Works? Because I feel like you're getting some information here that has not been discussed or new to you, or a little bit new to you.
Yeah, it's brand new information I haven't seen or heard before by people who aren't here. So that's new.
And it sounds like RPA is not going to be able to make a decision here on the 5 involving Public Works. I feel like a deferral is like the only option we have at this point.
Well, why couldn't we take action on this? And we're not approving a hammerhead. We're not approving a cul-de-sac.
It's kind of like some of these. I mean, the issue is that I guess you'll be given a variance in a way, but that doesn't mean he's going to get it signed by Public Works. Because
Right.
in the end, Public Works works for council and mayor.
Right. I mean, if the fire marshal doesn't sign off on ability to safely navigate to these
That
lots,
was my next question.
then he's not asking us for a land disturbance permit or a permit to build houses.
they'll just have to come back and get it redone.
So
Mr. Burke.
I'm looking at the subdivision regs 401.1.5.2B. Alternate turnarounds are typically only allowed where topography or unique natural features make a cul-de-sac impractical, or as stub-out streets that demonstrate potential connectivity across multiple parcels or phases. And I know we're kind of moving past the hammerhead conversation, but I think it's important to kind of clarify where they're not allowed and where they are. It seems to me if this hammerhead were extended up to Woodland, it would match the subdivision regulations. So I just want to put that out there as an alternative path.
I'm going to read you the email that I received from Elsie Interiano, who's reviewed this plat. The driveways cannot be part of the turnaround. The developer would need to build out the road to provide a forward motion or through street capacity for city services. I understand that the parcel has topographic constraints, so possibly another option could be considered. Hope this helps. The real crux of it sounds like that road needs to come on through based on their opinion at that time. And maybe it's discussions had with Public Works to see if there can be something hammered out.
Yeah, last I knew, again, she tends to make comments after the fact. We have one right now where she, we won't get into that. But at one point, certainly up until about a month ago, we had approval from CDOT for our construction plans. We had approval from Public Work, from landscaping, from stormwater, from all of the departments in our land disturbance review process. All the departments signed off except for zoning, which asked us to replat these 3 lots, which is why we're here.
I think this is fantastic. I mean, these are lots of record that have been platted, some 100 years ago. And it's very uncommon for a developer to actually come back in and request permission to build a road that was platted well over 100 years ago. And, yes, things change. We're not issuing a land disturbance permit or any building permits. And frankly, it sounds like the developer has a fight on its hands with Public Works in regards to whether or not a hammerhead will suffice and those sorts of things. But I feel like we should take action on this.
If you want to take action, move it on. If next steps, he'll go through land disturbing permits. If that doesn't happen, this layout doesn't work. Worst case, he has to come back through the plan.
But Mr. Chairman, I've kind of just want to make clear when Planning Commission gives a variance, and this is going to come up again. There's things that we put in the subdivision regs that are creating basically a problem where Public Works doesn't have to act on, because Public Works in the end has responsibility for life safety and liabilities and lots of stuff for the city of Chattanooga. So the Planning Commission absolutely approves new subregs and can approve a variance, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Public Works Director is going to sign off on a plan. So it's just things like that I've said we need to revisit this year, and the subdivision regs where we're going to the thing I worry about is somebody actually buying something with the intent of doing something or on a parcel of property, and then through the actions of the Planning Commission or a developer end up in a place where they can't use the property. I think that when we have that inconsistency in the subregs and what we expect the Public Works Director will approve, then we're creating a problem where we're going to have some kind of inconsistency. But that's it. You can go ahead and take action. If it doesn't work out, it'll be Rocky that figures it out.
What's the will of the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Question for Mr. Chambers.
Mr. Chambers, so the deferral to take a little time and revisit this with Public Works was presented, but I'm gathering from your lack of a response that you would rather roll the dice and move forward.
I don't know that a deferral gets me anything.
Just want to make sure.
So, yeah, I
Okay.
prefer to go ahead and move forward.
Very good. Just want to make sure that option's out there for you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mabee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with a lot of what our chairman mentioned earlier about how we're not approving the hammerhead here or the actual turnaround. And I understand Mr. Reuter's concerns that we may be approving something that Public Works may not, but in this case, I think the applicant is fully aware that could end up being the case. So I do feel comfortable moving this one along. So I'd make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Anderson. Thank you. Next case on the agenda is the first item under old business, and it's case 2024-0030. It's located at 2608 Dodson Avenue, and it's an application to rezone from R1 to R2, and staff has recommended to deny. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? All right. We'll take action without an applicant present. Mr. Schultz.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this was presented last month. Staff recommended to deny the request. It was rezoned from R1 to R2 for a duplex. Basically, there's two lots of record. The applicant, instead of getting two duplexes or one duplex, could actually get two single-family dwellings and two ADUs, gets him 4 units instead of the 2. I think he was going to go back and talk to the property owner to come back. He's not here. Nothing's changed since last month. We still feel the option of keeping the 2 lots of record, building 2 single-family dwellings, 2 ADUs is a better approach than rezoning to R2. Because the plan in this area specifically says urban residential, the single-family overlay, meaning single-family dwellings are more appropriate at this location.
Mr. Schultz, can we withdraw an applicant's request?
No,
The applicant
Applicant
has to ask for a withdrawal.
yes. And we reached out multiple times last month, to try to get the applicant to withdraw. Went through the whole
So if
scenario.
the applicant were here, they could ask to withdraw in this
Yes.
case.
Yes, and last month, the applicant, I believe it's a surveyor representing the applicant. I wasn't sure that he was really understanding what was going on, how this is a better solution for them.
The
We
issue
reached
is
out
if
several
we
times.
deny it, then it makes it difficult for the applicant is not the property owner. The property owner is damaged by our denying it.
No.
And the applicant's not here.
I think in this case, the property owner is the applicant. He wasn't here last month. He had a surveyor represent him. And they sign, when they submit the application to RPA, we have them sign. So they're fully aware of what's happening, if denied at city council.
Yeah,
Oh, he can't withdraw before city
he
council.
can.
He can't, yeah, he can't hear, but he can city council.
Okay.
Right. So if we recommend to deny, he could withdraw prior to city council final action.
It's a little harder, but he can, yes.
Yeah, actually, when I was chairman, I made sure that was in our council rules. The
Okay.
week after planning commission to the week that it's heard in our planning and zoning committee, that you can withdraw without any record. So that is actually
Is it better?
a safeguard built in.
Yeah.
To avoid going through that process and then having a denial actually on record when the case is reheard. So.
Mr. Bird?
If this were to be rezoned to R2, would that damage the lot of record status in any way, or could they theoretically build 2 duplexes?
He wouldn't have enough lot size in front of his 2 duplexes. He would have to get rid of a lot of record. And the plan, again, the plan was very specific in that it says urban residential, crosshatch over top of it means that neighborhood failed, it should remain single family. And so he's got 2 lots of record. You can do 2 single family dwellings.
But the lots of record aren't large enough to support R2 under the
Correct.
current zoning.
Correct.
What's the will of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go ahead and move this forward with a denial because I think there's some work that we can do between now and with Councilwoman Coonrod. Second.
We have a motion to deny and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. First item under new business has been withdrawn. That's case 2024-0037. Next case, our agenda is case 2024-0038. And this is located at 4118 Dodds Avenue. And it's an application to rezone from R2 to C2 convenience commercial. Staff has recommended to deny C2 convenience commercial zone and approve UGC with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? All right, and are you familiar with staff's recommendation? Sure. Okay, that's fantastic. All right, we'll call you up. Or you can go ahead and come up. Mr. Schultz, can you present?
Okay, this is case 2024-38. This is a request to rezone this property from R2 residential zone to C2 convenience commercial zone for proposed commercial use. It's a little less than half an acre in size. Looking at the zoning map, it's R2 to the north, about 4 or 5 parcels to the north of this side, it's C2. To the west is R2 and C2 to the southwest. Immediately abutting this property to the south is UGC, and to the east of this side is R1. So there is precedent in this area for both C2 and UGC. There's been no recent zoning history for this particular piece of property. The UGC to the south abutting this property was rezoned from R1 to UGC in 2011. Then the property to the north, 4 parcels to the north, was rezoned from R2 to C2 in 1987, well in advance of us having UGC on the books. It's an existing commercial structure. You'll see abandoned structure you'll see in a minute. But to the north is single unit residential. To the east is single unit and vacant land. To the south is vacant land and single unit residential. To the west, across Dodds Avenue, is single unit residential and commercial uses. Here's a view of the structure. Another view of the structure. Another view of the site. This is northwest of the site. South of the site, you can see it's single family and vacant property. East of the site, again, more single family vacant land. This is west of the property, looking on Dodds Avenue. This property is in the Rossville Boulevard plan, which is adopted in 2004. It recommends light business mix, which is neighborhood commercial, which is C5, office 01, limited residential or similar uses. It doesn't really recommend the heavier commercial C2 type zones at this location. Here's a closer view of that place type or land use plan recommendation. The UGC zone is more appropriate at this location than C2. The UGC will allow the existing building to comply with building setbacks. C2 has a 25-foot perimeter setback. UGC is 0. The UGC would also promote an urban inform of the area rather than suburban form. There is presence of UGC in the area, which is south of this site. Staff recommends conditions limiting the building height because UGC can go up to 3 stories. Or 5, sorry, change it to 5. So staff recommends to deny the applicant's request because there are some nuisance uses in C2. We felt UGC was more appropriate. So again, as you go to 5 stories in UGC, staff recommended 25-foot height. And number 2 is auto-oriented uses, adult-oriented establishments, a kennel, animal daycare facility, animal grooming service, and similar uses for small domestic animals. Hospitals and self-storage facilities are prohibited. So it comes to you with a recommendation to approve UGC with 2 conditions, one on height and the other on uses. We just felt the UGC was more appropriate at this location.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? Mr. Bird?
What's the height limitation in R1?
R1 is 35 feet or 2.5 stories.
Thank you.
All right.
My name is Dave Harper. I'm one of the owners, and I guess my concern is the limited use. We don't really know what it's going to be used for. It's already subdivided up, and it could be used for one purpose or for multiple purposes. So that does concern me about the UGC. Instead of the C2, I get the setbacks on the C2, and maybe there's no way to get around that.
Councilman Ledford?
Thank you, Chairman. I would imagine that you are going to see the same conditions applied under C2 by the time it got to council. I think these conditions would transpose right over to whether it's UGC or C2. So if that helps you, these are pretty canned responses to C2 that we are seeing at council.
So
that helps you.
If we subdivide it up and into 4 sections and with different uses for each section, do we have to come back to the council each time, or how does that work?
No, the only thing that this would do, I mean, you'd have all the permittable uses under urban general commercial zone, which are, everything but manufacturing pretty much. I mean, I don't know.
It's a lot.
Exclude.
You still have a lot of uses. You just couldn't do these things here. Now you can come back and lift these conditions at some point if you needed to. I think the Commissioner Ledford's point, I think you would see the same conditions if it was C2 as well from staff.
We can't pick up the building and move it. There is a parking lot that we don't, there's a lot behind it. You just pass it, but that I think is R2. And we were thinking about maybe trying to turn that into a parking lot because there's not a lot of parking for this building. So I'm just concerned about limiting the use of the building because there's all sorts of ways it could be used, and I don't want to do that, but you'll know better than I do.
Well, just so I mean, so what we're saying is limiting it to the items that are here: auto-oriented, adult establishments, kennel, animal daycare, animal grooming, anything for small domestic animals, hospitals, or self-storage.
So just as, I'm Jay Robinson with Keller Williams, I have the property under contract. So self-storage, if we had, say, multiple users, we had maybe a framing contractor who rented part of it, and we had a cabinet maker, and we had an artist, that wouldn't be prohibited under this use. Okay. On auto-oriented uses, what if we sold it to a single user or two users who wanted to store cars? Not retail cars, but store cars. Would that be prohibited? Because we got an offer from a
That
guy
could
with 20
Fall under
cars.
self-storage.
Yeah, again, your self-storage. Auto-oriented uses are more like a bank, a tire store, or something like that.
Okay.
And that's the type of thing, especially in the GC zone, it has specific things: gas
Right.
stations,
Right.
service stations, convenience stores, drive-ins, drive-throughs, auto dealerships, auto repair detailing. So you couldn't do that under that
Right.
use.
But you could store automobiles there.
Well, it's just self-storage facilities. I don't think you could based on that.
Well, I think we mean
Yeah, Mr.
self-storage.
Schultz is,
I think storing something, if this was R1 and it was a big building, you could store your own cars in there.
Yeah.
is there?
This is a
listed-
very, I mean, it's as normal a zone as
Right.
we
We just want,
pass.
we want to make sure we're in compliance. And yeah, that was the one thing that stood out to me was self-storage facility. You know, if we had a framer, you know, who's working out of there, coming in and out of there, storing
No,
lumber and tools.
it's that self-storage definition is like what
Mini
you,
warehouses.
the mini warehouses.
Right. Okay.
That's what's prohibited.
Got it.
Do you have that definition available?
Self-storage.
For self-storage.
I can find it. But that's,
Now, it would be,
these are typical conditions we see every month.
you couldn't cut it up into self-storage closets
Without coming back.
without
here.
coming back and having that condition lifted.
Okay. And as far as the parking lot in the back or the R2 lot in the back, we can deal with that in a later date. We've actually got it under contract, so who knows what the new buyer may want to do with that back lot. We haven't asked to change the zoning on the back lot.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Yes. So is that a yes to UGC with the two conditions?
Well, we'd love to have no conditions, but yes, that's yes to UGC.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Move to approve UGC with the two conditions.
Second.
We have a motion to approve and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. And that was a motion to approve with conditions and it was properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Next case on the,
And Mr. Chairman, I was going to say, that area is, we're looking at the area plan for that entire area right now. And I anticipate we're going to try to move towards making more urban uses like UGC out there. So I don't think, I mean, again, UGC, you can do multifamily in it too. I mean, so I think in general, it's the right zoning for that site.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you. Jay, have you talked to Councilwoman Dotley yet? Okay, I highly suggest you do that between now and council. Yeah. Okay, keep trying. Keep trying.
Jay, email her.
Thank you.
Next case on the agenda is 2024-0039, and this is located at 313 Tremont Street. And it is an application to rezone from R1 to RTZ. And staff has recommended to deny the applicant's request. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? Mr. Schultz?
Sure. This is case 2024-39. This is a request to rezone from R1 residential zone to RTZ for a single unit residential. It's 0.25 acres of size. Proposed number of units 2. That's a density of 8 dwelling units per acre. Looking at the zoning map, again, this is currently zoned R1. To the north along Tremont is R3 and R1. To the west is R1 and R3. To the east is R3 along Tucker. And to the south of this site is form-based code, ERM3 and ERA2. There's been no zoning history on this particular site. However, to the south, we've had multiple zoning cases over the years on that form-based code property. I won't go through all those, but there's been a history of zoning cases on those. So just looking at the zoning map, there is no RTZ in this general vicinity. This is the property. It's 313 Tremont Street. There is a single-family unit on the front. To the north is single-unit residential. To the east, across Tremont, is multi-unit residential and single-unit residential. To the south, we had the multiple zoning cases. That's multi-unit residential that's under construction today. There are some slopes on these properties. We have this map here to show you, again, as you're sloping up from Tremont up to Tucker Street, it gets very steep, over 26% slopes. And in some locations, you can see on the map, this area is in the middle where all those slopes range. This is a view of the site from Tremont Street. This is the home that's on Tremont. The other home is right behind it, or proposed the location is behind this one. Another view of the site from Tremont Street. This is a view of the site from Tucker, looking down towards Tremont. Again, another view of the site from Tucker. This is north of the site, which is single-family dwellings, one-story bungalows. This is south of the site on Tremont, again, multifamily at this location and single-family. East of the site, again, more one-story bungalows or two-story bungalows. This is a view west of the site that's under construction, where you had, again, those multiple zoning cases on the property. This is Tremont Street. The site's just on the left-hand side. This is looking at Tucker Street. The site's just on the left-hand side of this picture. This property is located in a North Shore plan, which was adopted in 2007, which recommends urban infill, medium high-density residential for Tremont Street. Again, that's on Tremont. It recommends urban infill. And on Tucker, there was no land use plan. You can see on the map here, it doesn't include the area on Tucker. So there is no land use plan recommendation for that portion of the site. We do rely on that case. We do rely on the comp plan, which recommends level 1 for the Tucker portion of the site, which is least potential for development, just because of lack of services or steep slopes or any type of infrastructure issues. The request to rezone this portion of the property along Tremont Street is compatible with the adopted land use plan, adjacent land uses and development reform. However, the request to rezone the Tucker Street portion of the site to RTZ zone would not be appropriate. It would not be compatible with the adopted comprehensive plan, which recommends to limit disturbance on steep slope areas. The current R1 zone with accessory dwelling units meets the plan goals of urban infill while protecting the development of the hillside. The applicant could construct an ADU on this property. It would be a fronting Tucker Street. It'd also be a smaller footprint, which we just recently amended to 800 square foot, which would also allow protection of the steep slopes in this location. So staff recommended to deny this request to rezone to RTZ.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? All right.
Zach Bucher, 313 Tremont Street. Bear with me. I'm a biologist. I don't construct homes, and I'm diving into this code and kind of spinning my head a bit, but it's a little more complicated than I wanted to get into with this. I was hoping it would be simple, but so our goal with this project is just, we wanted to subdivide our lot and build a single family home up on top of the hill, primarily to get away from that construction you just saw. But also I think that's kind of what the neighborhood sees as what folks want. There's a lot of Airbnbs and everything on Tremont Street and other development going on next door that folks I don't think are super happy about. And I think having more single family dwellings in that area would only benefit the community. So like I said, I'm new to this whole process. So everything that I've done so far has been based off of guidance from RPA staff, from CDOT. I've bothered the heck out of them. But all in all, I'd say based on the comments that we received, we're basically on the same page. When I started developing a plan for our property, of course, the first thing I saw was those slopes, and I said, well, this is going to be expensive. And then, but on the RPA side, they're saying, well, we want to protect our slopes and the environment and everything else. So we're playing in the same court right there, right off the bat. So the next thing I noticed was that right away at the top of the street, which kind of getting into two cases, it's the following thing on the agenda is also myself with a right-of-way abandonment. So I talked to CDOT, did the pre-application meeting. I think I addressed the comments that they provided appropriately or took them into consideration, suggesting continuing a 50-foot right-of-way that's similar to 338 Tucker, which had been abandoned in 2020. So after that, further discussions with RPA regarding the minimum lot size in R1s not being satisfactory if we were to subdivide our lot. RPA suggested applying to rezone to RTZ, and that's kind of where we find ourselves now. So going through there, I figured I'd just touch on the issues in the staff recommendations. So steep slopes. My proposed plan, again, I was taking into account steep slopes, maybe from a different perspective, but very much trying to develop the least steep portion of the property and minimize vegetation clearing as well. So I wasn't super clear in my map I put together. We're proposing a 1,500 square foot single family residence. I should have put 2-story because the suggestion of an 800 square foot ADU is actually going to end up being more disturbance than what we had planned as part of our project on our goals for this. And we went down that route of a smaller house so that we would be disturbing the hillside as least amount possible. And also just keeping, the character of the neighborhood because, the steep slopes are continuously being developed with giant boxes. So another thing I wanted to note, and I actually have here, 338 Tucker Street is under contract currently. That potential landowner reached out to me and provided me with a letter of support for our project. I haven't had one single negative discussion with anybody else in the community regarding, the development of another single family residence in the area. I brought copies if y'all would like one of those. So compatibility with the adjacent land uses and development form, that's something that kind of caught me off guard when I was, again, not having a lot of experience with this. I looked into the Tremont Street side and thought, we're good with RTZ. And I think probably the planners did as well with RPA because that's, again, how they suggested the route I go. So on that side of things, I do kind of, put that out there for suggestions as to how to move forward if that is, in fact, not compatible with Tucker Street side of the property. But the goal there, again, was just to accommodate the minimum lot size. That's all we're trying to do. So whatever route we can do, whatever route we need to take to get it to be able to develop a lot size that's smaller than the R1 restrictions. That's all our goal there. And then the last thing I saw in there was compatibility with natural resource systems. Like I said, I'm a biologist. I'm 100% gonna, stabilize those slopes, revegetate with native species, all the things that you could probably do and some. So finally, I just wanted to touch on the staff recommendations. I mentioned the RTZ zoning and just looking for suggestions there. Recommending an ADU build. It doesn't really fit our ADU our development goals. And there was suggestion of smaller setbacks, which I understand that is a benefit of that. But given the slope and the angle of the right of way, it doesn't really help us all that much to get a 5-foot difference in setback from an ADU 10-foot to a single family 15-foot, just because of how that lot shape is on there. And then finally, the ADU development, this is more of a personal issue, but you can't finance ADU. So that puts, a lot of weight on the person trying to develop a project in the area. And then also, the voice of the people of our street is that we don't want more Airbnbs, and we want, residents in them to have neighbors and actually have discussions with us rather than a rotating, amount of people coming in and out of their house. So, yeah, that's where I am. I didn't touch on the right away side of things, but I think I'm probably up on my time there.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
Biologist. So have you run or worked with an engineering firm? I want to make sure that you understand what the steep slope vegetation component that council put in a couple of years ago, the impact that will have, because Brian, I'm looking at the topo and it's pretty steep right there.
Steep.
So it pretty much covers the entire probably property because that's 30 degrees and above.
Mm.
Have you had that engineered or at least a friend look at it to know what you're up against?
I've talked to some builders who have discussed it with me, and the generalities of it, and I understand it's a big lift, which
It's
is
a
part
big
of the
lift.
reason why that
Yeah.
was a concern right off the bat.
Okay. I'd love to see you do what you want to do with that property. I do have some concerns also with the closure. Can we talk about that, Brian, real quick?
Sure. And before I get to that, I'll go to that case as well.
And I in all fairness, I go up Tucker that way to drop off my son's, one of his best friends that lives up top there.
Absolutely.
And is that part of what we're talking about? Is
Well, that next case is a closure.
that's what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
to clarify, the applicants mentioned that RPA, and when we meet with our applicants meet with us, we give them guidance on trying to subdivide it or a zone that may work. Doesn't mean we're going to support it. Just means the options are RTZ if you want the smaller lots to get within your lot parameters. Doesn't mean we're going to support it, but that we just offer that to all the citizens who come in and ask to meet with us. Based on subdivision, he couldn't do it because you'd have 7,500 square foot for each lot and so much frontage. That's a variance that would go in front of the Board of Appeals. So I think Cassie offered, RTZ. That leads in this next question. To get the lot size, even for RTZ, he's requesting to abandon the right of way in the back on Tucker Street. You can see on the map here, the one to the north was abandoned. Next slide. In 2020, so it was abandoned to the north portion of this right of way. This is the area requested today to be abandoned to help get the property owner additional land or additional square footage for his property. Here's the view of the site again, steep slopes. I'll go through this. Again, we rely pretty heavily on the transportation department for our comments on road closures because we're looking at it from big picture, 30,000 views of landlocking any property. But transportation felt there is a need to retain the right of way at this location to meet city standards for public health and safety and for future roads, sidewalk, and erosion control improvements. Just because of steep slopes, they may have to go in and stabilize this road at some point in the future. Therefore, they needed to have that right of way for that stabilization efforts. The request does not meet the City of Chattanooga right-of-way closure and abandonment policy. So staff recommends to deny the abandonment request.
Okay, now Brian, can you help me out real quick? You said the property next door, they did abandon it though.
Council approved that.
Okay, because I'm seeing a precedent starting here.
As Dan always says, every case has the precedent setting at some
Well,
point.
but the applicant doesn't care whether the right of way is abandoned or not. Why would the applicant care?
He needs the
He needs the size for
of
lot
building.
frontage.
He's got to build in the right of way.
Oh,
Excuse me.
taking the right of way,
Yes, he wants that right
not
of way.
abandoning. Yeah,
He's abandoned the request to abandon the right of way. Add that to his property, get the square
Gotcha.
footage.
gotcha. Sorry,
He's got to build.
I was
Yeah.
misreading that diagram
It was
as
it was-
going the other direction.
So Brian,
Yes.
when we meet with, was there any suggestion, even with our new zoning codes coming online, probably early fall-ish area, I'm looking at Mr. Anderson here, reducing the lot sizes, and maybe even with an introduction of a smaller lot size, maybe even down to 3,000.
With RTZ,
Does that,
RTZ
does
is
that
3,000
provide-
now.
what's that?
RTZ is 3,000 right now. So if you even the new zone potentially coming online, it'd be the same, in theory, same lot size.
I worry about the RTZ as your zone. You can understand that.
Yeah,
Now thinking
absolutely.
ahead,
Yeah.
if you're
it's-
not,
it's
if you're
in
not willing
perpetuity.
to, if you're
Right.
not needing to build right away, could there be some time here where you might actually be able to do this?
And I will say, Mr. Chairman, just looking at the map, and what's happening a lot on Tremont Street is a lot of these properties were divided back in the 1920s and 30s by deed. You couldn't do a lot of that stuff on Tremont today through platting. So you look at next door, I think it's 313 and 315. That was probably done by plat. Who knows when that was done by a deed? Never was platted that way. So a lot of those are deeds, lots of record, if you will. And so that's just continued along Tremont.
And if I could interject just one thing, I based on my calculations, I don't think we actually need the right of way abandonment to be able to meet the lot minimums if we were able to just subdivide it. I think we would still, if I did the calculations correct, be able to develop that upper portion of the property. So I was mainly seeing that right of way abandonment as being beneficial to us in that it would take that odd angle that our parcel is on that top end there and bring it out to match
So I've got a
Tucker
question
Street.
that might help resolve all this. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but is the urban infill lot compatibility option viable here?
No,
And if
that
so,
was
why
removed
not?
about 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
The other options are
Okay.
try to subdivide, go get variances through Board of Appeals, or rezone to a zone that would meet the lot sizes as proposed by the applicant. Or you construct leave it as zone and do the 2-story ADU. Well, Emily does the ADU, she explained that better than I.
The maximum height for a detached ADU is 24 feet. So you could have two 12-story, 12-foot heights if you wanted it to be a smaller footprint, as he said, but going up
But the maximum square footage
is 800 for both. And the ADU doesn't require it to be a short-term vacation rental. You can have it be used as a long-term rental or for use with the household. I understand wanting to sell and have that income, but ADU doesn't always equate to automatically being short-term vacation rental.
So 800 on top of 800.
4 on 4.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But first of all, thank you, Ms. Wood, for that distinction. I think that's an important thing to remember about the ADUs, that does not automatically mean vacation rental, because I think some people would have some concerns with that. But quick question for staff is that ERA or ERM? I'm not overly familiar with those. Is that an option potentially to address some of his?
We had talked about it briefly during staff review, but just continuing that creep up Tremont with form-based code, drawing the hard line where we stop that at. We didn't really get into would that work or not, specifically with this site.
Okay. Do you think there would be potential, or is it? I don't even know if it would be close, I guess.
The similarities between RTZ when we amended it a few years ago for the urban overlay were mimicked off of ERD form-based code. So the lot sizes for single family detached are, I think, the exact same and similar setbacks as form-based code. Form-based code would just have other design standards that RTZ doesn't have, like landscape and other things. I'm not quite familiar with the specifics offhand. It just has additional design standards.
So that'd be ERD, but not this ERA is what.
Yeah, ERA is the attached, like the townhouse
Okay.
zone. So it's sort of RTZ now is sort of a combination of both, because we amended it to allow it has always allowed townhouses, but it also allows the multi-unit up to 4, which is what ERA also allows.
Thank you.
All right. Just to make sure we stay on point, case 2024-0039. So we'll handle the mandatory referral separately. What's the will of the commission? Councilman Ledford.
Have you by chance, thank you, Mr. Chairman, have you by chance talked to Councilwoman Hill?
I did. I reached out to her early on, and she wanted to hear the comments
Conversation
from
with
everyone.
Planning Commission. Sure, that sounds about right.
Is there? Sorry to
No,
interrupt.
please.
Is there a situation because our goals are such that RTZ I think is thrown up in the air because of these multifamily units, the townhouses. Is there a way to put a condition on this lot that says it's RTZ, but it's only for a single family dwelling? And is that because that's kind of where we want to be, but there's just nothing that fits that box.
And I promise you, we feel your pain. This is why I suggested our new zoning codes that we're right in the middle of right now, because I think there will be probably a tool introduced that you could do this very easily.
Okay.
In R1 or a residential with a 3,000, that's being discussed right now. My last question is: are you in a big hurry? Is this something that I got to get on right now?
No, not necessarily, but it's one of those things we jumped on it now because you know how things go to get a contractor.
The
on
cost
board.
is dropping to build, right?
Well,
Yeah.
that was definitely a factor, but it's more so time. I mean, I talked to 3 different contractors. They're all 18 months out. So
Right.
while 6 months might not feel that long right now to wait till the fall, it ends up compounding every time you talk to somebody and try to get something lined up. And so that's why we were like, well, we'll just jump on it now and try and get this figured out. Additionally, they're making fast progress on the apartment building next to our house. So.
I want to find a way to help you on this. This RTZ gives me a little heartburn.
Yeah, I mean,
Because it
likewise,
just opens
because
up the box.
yep.
Councilman Ludford, can you expand on that?
Setting a precedence as we move, and plus the tool. I mean, we're basically talking about zoning that council is aware of, as far as especially in the urban overlay, where we need smaller lots and the capability to build a home. And the RTZ, even if we condition it, which is, I think, can we legally defend that? That would be my question.
Council, I mean, Planning Commission is recommending.
We can legally defend it until we can. I
Yeah.
guess that's what we would ask it. I really want to find a way to help.
And I will say, well, just building on that, this is one that really is zoned R1.
Mhm.
Trying to subdivide, at the end of the day, trying to subdivide, put a single family home. You would normally go through Board of Appeals. We had a gentleman on Tremont Street, went to Board of Appeals last week, similar situation, and was denied 9-0 because Board of Appeals felt that he was creating his own hardship by subdividing it.
That was.
I think that's what's going to happen to this gentleman. If he goes
I
to the
agree.
Board of Appeals, it's going to be you creating your hardship here. It's going to get denied. So it's going to be back in front of us going for some zone.
And that's
So-
exactly where I don't want you to end up is because that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The hardship
But
will be
when you-
self-created.
When you think about infill in general, when you have not just this lot, but lots of lots like this is not an uncommon thing for folks to come in and rezone parcels to get a smaller lot size and then subdivide them. I think we have to just be, I think Brian's right. When we do it here, it could be blocks up the road. Somebody's gonna say, well, that
But
property down the street,
hold on.
we did it. So I mean,
why would we care if it was blocks up the road? We're talking about Tucker Street, which is a one-sided street. Normally, streets have houses on both sides. We're talking about a house going on the other side of an existing street that the city already has on, in essence, a street that is well underdeveloped because of the fact that nothing is on the downhill side of Tucker Street. So our worst case scenario and the great fear that we might have is that it would somehow set a pattern that Tucker Street developed in keeping. I don't see where that's damaging anybody. And the neighborhood is an incredibly active neighborhood. And if we were considering a case that they had any concerns about, they'd be here in great numbers. The fact that there is a new zoning code coming, I think, is irrelevant in regards to this case. It's just as irrelevant as the city saying, hey, we're working on rewriting our codes, and so we're going to hold you to this new standard. The reality is that today, those new codes are not in place. We do have a path forward. It's a staff recommendation to deny based on the reasons they've said, but this planning commission can and should take action. Mr. Ledford.
So Brian, what would an amendment language read if it was restricted to what he is wanting to accomplish?
Just approve RTZ with condition of single family detached dwelling only.
And I do think, I disagree with the chairman every now and then. I do think what we're doing at the city is very relevant in this conversation because we are moving in that direction.
Well, I actually agree with the chairman. He just didn't let me finish. What I'm saying is we're going to have infill things like this happening all over the
And I agree.
I mean, this just happens to be a lot that's really long and has frontage on another road.
I agree.
I mean, so it's just every one of them is going to be different. In some cases, council might feel strongly about it. In other cases, you won't.
So with that in mind, I'm going to move to approve with the condition of single family detached unit only. And I'm very interested to see where this conversation moves on to council. So that's my motion.
We have a motion to approve, subject to one condition, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, on to the mandatory referral 2024-0040. This is a 300 block of Tucker Street, and it's a request by an applicant for a right-of-way closure. Staff is recommended to deny. We've heard from staff already in regards to the reasons for that. Do you wish to say anything in regards to that hasn't already been said?
Yeah, I promise I won't take 7 more minutes, everybody. But I just wanted to note, the 338 Tucker, the abandonment, it's almost identical slopes. It's, if you go back and look at the application, which I've done many times at this point, there, it's a slightly steep drop off of Tucker Street, then it levels out, and that right there is the most flat portion of our lot on that end of it. Right now, it's been completely destroyed and cleared by the adjacent development because they used the top portion of that right of way to push dirt down the hill. So right now it is totally cleared. There was a ton of debris that had been thrown over the slope. So now that debris is now smashed into the dirt and been covered. There's trees that have been buried by that activity as well on the right of way. So this right of way is not in good shape as is. It's unstabilized. There's just bare dirt exposed. There's, like I said, a lot of trash and refuse down there. And then what I was proposing was based off of CDOT's comments for keeping that 50-foot right-of-way that 338 used, so that there is room for the improvements and everything that the staff at RPA had suggested that right-of-way would be valuable for. So I think what we're asking for is just to continue what is already existing on 338 farther to the south. There would still be plenty of right-of-way for future improvements on the road. And then, like I said, the biggest thing there, aside from being able to clean it up, make it look nice, would be just for us to have that space to then move farther up the hill, decrease the amount of steep slopes we're on, and just have that flexibility with the setbacks and everything. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, because it is a right-of-way, the only utility that's on it right now is an AT&T line. The construction next door already has conduit buried, and they plan to pull that line to the pole that's right on Tucker Street. So there will be no utilities on it. So it seems to me like it would be an easy 50-foot extension to the south of Tucker Street to mirror 338.
Councilman Ledford.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to approve.
We have a motion to approve, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate all your time.
Good luck.
Next case on the agenda is case 2024-0041, and this is located at 3827 Mountaintop Road, and it's an application to rezone from R1 to A1. Staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? Is the applicant present? And are you familiar with the conditions that have been recommended by staff?
Yes.
We have a motion to approve the staff recommendation. It has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next cases. Item 6 on our agenda, it's case 2024-0042, and this is located at 4902 Johnson Road, and it's a special permit for a tent-only campground, and staff is recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present?
Mr. Chairman, we did receive some emails in opposition to this request. And I guess there's nobody here in opposition. We need to clarify on the conditions. We looked at this and didn't really catch it on the site plan. But we had a condition recommend approve with conditions, no more than 50 campsites. It's actually 5 campsites. So it's 5 tents. And a commercial camp store is prohibited. So this comes to you with approve with 2 conditions of only 5 tents on this property and no commercial camp stores permitted. Instead of the 50 that we thought. And I have a site plan indicated in the red. You can see where the 5 tents will be located, and the area in green is where a future bathhouse will be located on this property. So this permit stops with the planning commission. It doesn't go on the county commission. So what this body does will be the end of it today.
Okay. Thank you. You're the applicant. Can you speak on the case? You want to come up?
This is just a way for we planned to start with just one tent site. We had a previous Airbnb for the farm that helped supported the farm activities on the property. And when the new laws came out in the summer of last year, then it prohibited us from being able to use the structure that we were using for an Airbnb. We were already working on like a glamping tent for another one located in it would be the second location on the map right behind the first one. So we just thought we abandoned the building that we were using for a little Airbnb getaway and just going to the glamping tent. It'll just be simpler. We just use this just to further our farming ability to, provide fencing for our animals, to provide materials for, gardening and things like that. So it's just an income basically for us to further our farming adventure.
And in regards to the conditions, you would be amenable to no more than 5 campsites and a commercial camp store is prohibited?
Yes.
Okay.
That's just
Mr. Schultz, it's our zoning code doesn't allow by right tents on property.
It doesn't speak to that issue. Now, if you want to go in the backyard and camp, certainly have that right. We start having guests come there. I think that's the difference. And so we did create many years ago this special permit in the A1 zone to allow folks like that to have this type of facility.
So the specifics around this permit are so that they can charge somebody to stay in a tent
Yes.
on their property.
Yeah. Now, if you want to have 5 friends up there every weekend, I don't know if there's anything prohibits that, but because she's charging rent, it becomes like it's a true recreational type use for people paying to come stay on the property.
Okay.
Yeah, in effect, it's a Airbnb with a tent structure where they come and they stay in a tent. They can pretend they're camping.
Sounds
'Cause
nice.
it's not really camping if you
Mis-
have a full bed.
Yeah, Mr.
And-
Chairman, I've done this before and it comes with a king size bed and everything else. It's not camping.
Yeah.
No, it's not camping at all. I have also done it. So it comes with air conditioning. So our main source of Airbnb people come from a wedding venue, Howe Farms, and we just happen to be pretty close. That is that and the Sand Hill Crane thing. Those are our main clientele. A lot of people thought that we were going to get fishermen, but we never get fishermen because we're just not big enough.
Okay. Mr. Webster.
I just had a question though about it doesn't sound like you want to do a camp store or anything, but I've stayed at places like this and I didn't know why that provision was put in there, because everywhere, they sell hats and maybe some honey that's there and firewood. I just don't know how that has any negative impact on anybody there. And I don't know why we would limit them to that if they wanted to do that.
Yeah. Right now, I can answer that. The special permit does allow camp store as part of this tent-only campgrounds up to 1,000 square feet. I think staff looked at it. If you put a camp store here, what would stop the general public from coming there, treating it like a retail facility, if you will? And the condition of the road, it reminds me of the road going into this. It's not adequate for public going back and forth. That was the real reason behind the prohibiting the camp store. If y'all want to
May I
add it, and that's something that
I guess my question was,
Well, I see your point. It would be nice to be able to sell some of our local stuff that we do, but we have a gate at the property, so we don't. And we don't allow people to come on property unless they, so that's one of the things. It wouldn't become a commercial thing just because we live very far on the back of the property and almost never know when someone's driving by. And so,
Yeah. Well, I've been to places where, I mean, they literally have like a honor system, you know,
Yes.
there. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, if there was some honey or something, I don't know.
yeah. And
It's not
and
none of
we
my
would-
business, but if that's something y'all wanted, I don't know.
We would like to, you know, the name of the ranch is Shonuff Ranch. We would like to provide hats and T-shirts, and you know, we do have bees, so some local honey, and it's my son that does the gardening and flowers and things like that. So, I mean, it would be nice if we could do something, you know, along that line, but not for any commercial use outside of our particular guests.
Is there any way to do that as for guest only?
I don't know how you enforce that. I mean, it's allowed by right in the permit. We just put a condition of prohibiting that. You know, if you guys want to remove that condition, it's up to you as a planning commission. It just makes it from an enforcement perspective. How do you know it's for the residents versus public coming and going?
Maybe somebody else has an opinion on that also. I personally think if they wanted to do that for their guests, I mean, it's just an added amenity to it as opposed to a store. And I've had to, I don't know, personally been in that situation, and it was nice and and also would provide a little bit of extra income. So,
Any other questions for the applicant?
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'll respond to Commissioner Webster's. I agree. I don't really see the need in putting that condition in there. So yeah, it's if it's just not something that she's really asking for right now, even though she could come back at a later date to ask for those conditions to be lifted later. But I'd support it with not having that condition in there.
And I would say, Mr. Chairman, I would say too, that probably if it turned into a general public retail store, the public would complain to the building department, and then notification letters will be sent out.
Mhm.
So there's a way to track it, more or less.
I did see some hands go up in opposition. So if there's no other questions for the applicant, I'd like to make sure we have an opportunity to hear from those who are here in opposition. Ma'am, you've got some neighbors here that might have some questions or concerns. We want to hear from them. If you're here and you want to speak in regards to this case, come on up to the mic.
Do I go sit?
Yeah, you can just take a seat and we'll come back to you in just a few minutes.
Bob Standifer, 4806 Johnson Road. I guess I got the most footage, I guess, next to them. We've had no problems with each other at all. I mean, they've come on our property many times, riding horses and things of that nature. Karen, they moved up here about 4.5 years ago, and they're overall we're good neighbors. They put their property up for sale about 2 years ago, and then took it back off the property, or took it off the listing about 6 months later. And the only reason I mention that is nothing against Karen, but there is a number out there that they would be willing to sell the property, but the permit that's going to be decided on today is going to stay with the property. And so they may only have one, two, maybe 3 Airbnbs, but the next person come along might want 50. And that's already been approved by RPA.
Well, just to be clear, there was an error on this.
Yes,
And
yes, it is.
it's not meant to
And-
say
and-
50, it's
and
meant
the
to say
only
5.
The only reason that error is coming before you is because I questioned her. And she said, oh, no, that was told us that we need to ask for that meeting. If I didn't question her about it, that would never have been even brought up.
I want to say that I think it's probably a typo.
Well, what we looked at it says, when we look at the site plan, it says campsites. You look at the way the permit's written, it says in each individual campsite, you can have 10 tents, if you will. So we took the 10 times the 5 and came up with 50.
Gotcha.
Didn't really start looking at the site plan until it actually said only 5 tents. We was confusing tent versus campsites.
So the applicant's request is what you see here in
With
front of
5
us,
areas,
which
of
is,
the 10 campsites each. And if you look at that bottom left one, I'm right there on that left-hand side corner. My house is probably 250, 300 feet from that fence line. You telling me that the gentleman back there in the back, if it's sometime in the future, there's a camp area put up back there, that person is going to go all the way from there. They have to go to the bathroom. They're going to go from there all the way back up to the front of the road, or they're going to go that 100-foot buffer between my house and their campsite. I'm just saying common sense. At 10 o'clock at night, they're not going all the way to the bathhouse. And that leads to the next question. My question is there going to be, and we discussed this, Karen and I, the heating and air conditioning, bathrooms. And she said, oh yeah, they're all going to be provided that. Well, the permit only says, it doesn't say that it's going to have bathrooms and heat and air. So my question is on that is, well, where is that going to come down the road? Is that going to be like, let's just get around the Airbnb and do it this way because it's an easier way for us to do it. And doesn't cost, we don't have to hit the codes of an Airbnb. My saying is, if she wants an Airbnb, have an Airbnb, but do the codes. That's my argument, because the tents are not going to be tents. They're really nice Airbnbs. So if you're going to do an Airbnb, do the codes for an Airbnb, but don't sit there and say, oh, we're just going to have tents and then work your way into an Airbnb.
Any questions for the opposition? Mr. Maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This isn't necessarily for the opposition. So this is the first one at least I remember us doing. There may have been some in the past. I just want to get some clarification, if I could, from the staff on the sites versus tents. So on each of those, would they be allowed to have 10 tents in that site? Is that correct?
Yes, under the current permit, you can get 10 per acre, but the way the conditions say is you can only have 5. So they only get 5 tents in this area.
So with that condition, you would only have 5 tents on that entire piece.
Correct.
Is what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay.
By the condition the staff proposed.
Okay.
And if maybe somebody correct if I'm wrong, to do the Airbnb or short-term vacation or whatever you want to call it, that has to be in a single-family dwelling. It cannot be in these tents. I think that's correct, Carl. I think it had to be in a single-family dwelling.
We're going down this road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Come on up.
I live next door on the northeast side of the property. And I'm just curious, what would be the square footage of one of these tents, so to speak?
We'll ask the applicant when they come back up. Thank you. Anything else?
That and just the concerns of bringing the extra traffic into the community. Theft is one that obviously comes to mind. These people basically have access right into mine and Mr. Stan's back doors. They have views onto our properties. I think, 200 feet off the property line, they're wanting to put a bathhouse. How would you all feel if that was inside of your front door? So that's really my only concern, and I am concerned about kind of the slippery slope with the conditions. 5 sites, and maybe that's not correct, but 10 tents per site. I've just got some concerns with what it could grow into and changing the zoning in the community as a whole. It's a residential, off the beaten path. Most of us drive 30 minutes back and forth to work just because we enjoy being out, away from town, and then it's kind of bringing town to us. So,
Mr. Chairman, can staff add something? This property, I believe, is zoned A1, and based on just the acres alone, 2 units per acre, in theory, they could roughly get 60-something single-family detached dwellings in here,
Right.
versus the 5. Doesn't mean it can't happen in the future anyway, but this probably could be developed with single-family dwellings, much more of an impact.
Right. Councilman Ledford.
Thank
And
you.
then Mr. Lehman.
Chairman Brian, we're not actually rezoning the property.
No, correct. It's staying A1. This is a
Is
special
this-
permit.
Yeah, is this permit revocable?
I was checking on that. I believe it is.
So if something does happen, we have,
It doesn't specifically say it is revocable. Some do, some say they are revocable, but this doesn't specifically mention that it's revocable.
Does it follow with the land or with the owner?
Doesn't say.
Doesn't say that.
Yeah, I'd say it stays with the land. It wouldn't go to the owner.
Okay.
But along sort of the lines of what Brian's saying here, I think we want in places in this county that folks want it to remain rural. We want to encourage ways for folks to keep it rural, be that raising livestock or doing anything that prevents them from having to sell the land for a development. So I think that was kind of our intent of trying to allow this to happen, was because it keeps it. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Schultz, can you help the young lady here? I think she might be in the wrong place or hearing.
Oh, the wrong meeting.
This is not the Supreme Court. Not today. Thank you, sir. We'll wait just 1 second.
I'm usually not anything like that funny. Nobody laughs at me like that. I laugh at me. I think I'm funny, but you know. But I guess my point was, Mr. Chairman, this is kind of a rural use.
Sure.
You know, this is not an urban. So again, I think
Ma'am, you can come back up to the mic.
I think the idea here was that, you know, this is getting used in a way that sort of keeps the area rural.
Thank you. Councilman Ledford.
one last question, Brian. Let me make sure, because I heard 50 and I heard 5.
It is 5.
5 tents.
It is 5. Without that condition, yes, you can get
And that is
10
a-
per acre.
That is a condition set.
That's
in
condition
two
staff's
basic
recommend.
permit.
That doesn't mean a year from now, she can come back and try to lift the condition, but right now, the condition
But you would
proposed.
have to go through the entire process
Correct.
again.
Correct.
Notifications, da, da, da.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am. One question that we did get was how big is a tent site?
It's no more than 12 by 16. I mean, sorry, 14 by 16.
14 by 16. Okay.
And if it, I'd like to, I didn't talk to Mark, and Bob didn't actually talk to me. He texted with me. But if you guys want me to take it down to just one, I'm happy to do that. I don't want to
Ma'am.
in our neighborhood.
Ma'am,
So, I mean, if we want to just do one, it's
well,
already. I don't-
staff has recommended no more than 5. That we're not going to negotiate it right now. So you can just do one if you want to, but what staff has recommended is no more than 5. I think we've answered the question in regards to how big they are. Are there any other questions for the applicant? What's the will of the commission?
Move to approve staff recommendations.
Did we want to do anything with the store at all? That was talked about earlier, and I just wanted to make sure that
Yes,
if we wanted to address.
Yeah, I did mention that. I'll move to approve with staff's recommendations. Number 1, omit number 2.
We have a motion to approve, subject to one condition, that there be no more than 5 campsites. And by that, to clarify, no more than 5 tents on the
Yes.
property.
Yes, and that's the way it was submitted initially. There was
Right.
never going to be more than one tent.
And that motion has been properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next case on the agenda, item 7 is case 2024-0043. And this is located at 2815 Cummings Highway, and it's an application to rezone from M3 and R2 to C2. And staff has recommended to approve with conditions. Is there any opposition present? You're here in opposition?
More questions.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right, Mr. Schultz. And,
Sure.
Mr. Jones, if you'll go ahead and come up to the mic. Maybe before we hear from Mr. Schultz, Mr. Jones, will you tell us whether or not will you just in 20 words or less tell us how you feel about the staff's recommendation to approve with conditions?
Full support.
Okay.
That's quick.
All right. Mr. Schultz?
This is a campground in the city of Chattanooga. The other one was in the county. This is in the city of Chattanooga. This is in Lookout Valley. This is a request to rezone from R2 and M3 warehouse zone with no conditions. This manufacturer zone has no conditions at all on it for a campground. And unfortunately, the city of Chattanooga, the only way to do a campground is in the C2 with a special permit from Board of Appeals. Therefore, you have the request to go C2. It's roughly a little less than 20 acres in size. Number of campsites is 65 in this location. There's been no recent zoning history on this particular piece of property, but just immediately to the south of this site, there was a special permit for a late night entertainment facility in 2012 at Cummings Highway. I think that facility's since closed. Here's a view of the property. It's 2815 Cummings Highway. The property to the north is owned by the National Park Service. To the south is Chickamauga National Military Park. I think again, Cummings Highway, you can see that, and Walhatchee Pike to the left. There is a flood hazard area on this particular piece of property. There are some slopes on it as well. You can see on the slope map here. Here's a view of the site from Cummings Highway. Cummings Highway is just on your right-hand side. This is the site or the entrance into the site. This is Cummings Highway. The site's on the left-hand side. This is south of the site, some of those commercial uses along Cummings Highway. This property is in the Lookout Valley Land Use Plan, which was adopted in 2003. The land use recommendation at that time recommended parks, open space and recreation for this property, which includes active and passive parks, community lots, conservation areas, recreational facilities, ball fields, etc. Tennis courts and campgrounds. Here's a closer view of that property. The proposal for a campground meets the Lookout Valley Land Use Plan. It is compatible with adjacent land uses. However, the only tool to get there is a C2 zone. With the C2 zone comes higher intense commercial development that would not meet the plan goals. So staff recommends some conditions, and a majority of this site is located in the floodplain and flood hazard area. So staff did reach out to LDO in terms of permitting. What happens during flooding? Do you have to comply with flood FEMA requirements? And most of the questions are yes, you do. So staff recommends to approve with 4 conditions: travel trailer campground with tents and RVs with complementary uses through a special permit or an allowed use. Again, that's a special permit from Board of Appeals. Separate from the special permit, camping facilities in addition to those allowed by the special permit include yurts, lodges, and cabins. Those are currently allowed through the C2 and would be allowed. Dwellings are also allowed, and no standalone retail or commercial uses. So basically, we're trying to limit this to campground and some of the associated uses with a campground, because this, again, is a C2 zone at this location. And so, again, it comes to you, the recommendation approved with 4 conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, the commission. Yeah, so we actually, so this project it's kind of branded as Romestead Chattanooga. The developers have also just completed one of these in the Great Smokies. It's called Romestead Great Smokies. It's a high-end glamping opportunity within Chattanooga. This is 10 minutes from downtown. It's close proximity to Raccoon Mountain. Of the 19 acres, you can see we're probably using less than half of the site, because we're trying to be respectful with all of the some of the environmental pieces of the property that we're trying to respect. We did hold a neighborhood meeting with the Lookout Valley Neighborhood Association last Thursday. We presented to them. Both Commissioner Graham and Councilman Henderson were there, and they were very supportive of it. And so was the neighborhood association. They were just glad it wasn't apartments. Was kind of their overarching comments. So I'll just leave my time for the neighbors. I have some questions.
Thank you. Sir, if you wish to speak, come on up.
Thank you. I own a couple of business sites.
State your name and address for the record.
Dan Spriggs, and the name of the business is Amara Home Care, and our address is 2821 Cummings Highway. We're in front of the proposed campground. We already have a couple other campgrounds going on, but they're homeless. They're underneath the bridge and up the street. I know we're talking about something different here, and but a couple of really light questions is how would this or would this affect our business there in front on Cummings Highway? Or would it? Unfortunately,
well, this particular request is only for the property that's behind you. So
okay,
no changes are being suggested to the zoning or entitlements of your property.
Okay. Okay.
So you're commercially zoned, it's C2. You're one of those in the 4 that's in front, so it's not rezoning your property. It's everything behind your property.
All right. If we wanted to, and again, this may be a personal conversation about if we wanted to purchase just a little portion on the back of us, is there an issue with any of that other than, okay. All right. Again, this may not be the place about a sewage coming through that area because right now there isn't any.
So we would only be rezoning the property today. You should definitely talk with Mr. Jones here about how they plan on handling sewer and all of those sorts of things. I'm sure he'll know how to answer those questions. So we're specifically looking at whether or not this is an appropriate use from a zoning perspective.
Well, hearing that is a high end, I mean, I think we're looking forward to it in upping the value and for that area in Lookout Valley. So I think it'd be good for Chattanooga, good for this area, and good for us. So
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alan, one quick question is in the business model, are folks going to be there on site?
Yes, this is going to have a professionally managed campground.
Yeah, and you're okay with the conditions?
Absolutely.
Chairman, move to approve the conditions.
We have a motion to approve with conditions, and it has been properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I think it's the first time in a while that we've approved one of your cases, isn't it? Feels like that.
I mean, defer.
Can we withdraw that real quick? Case 2024-0044 is located at 1650 Madison Street. And this is an application rezone from URD2 to URA3. And staff is recommended to approve the applicant's request. Is there any opposition present? Yes, please.
About going from 2 to 3 stories. And the intention when we did form-based code in this area was to keep it 3 stories. So I believe the staff is saying they approve the rezone, but they don't want it to go to 2 stories. They want to keep the 3-story maximum, even if this builder is not building more than 2.
That's correct. That's correct. The applicant did submit a condition of max of 2 stories. Staff felt 3 was appropriate there because the plan and where it backs up the railroad behind it. So we did not support the condition.
Are the ones on Adams Street 2 stories? I think they're 3. Right?
They're
On the
2.
other side of
The ones on Adams are 2, but the ones across the railroad track, where I live, are 3.
Well, I can hit this site with a rock, so I'm close too.
Yeah, you're close to.
But I mean, I'm with them. I'm with staff. I think 3 wouldn't bother me any.
Chairman, can I make a request of the motion maker to keep it at 3?
Make the motion.
I think, have you already recognized me?
I have not.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I don't think we have. Oh, I didn't catch that. Okay, there you go, Mr. Anderson.
All right, thank you. Chairman, I move to approve rezone to the URA3 zone with a maximum building height of 3 stories.
We have a motion and it has been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next case on the agenda is case 2024-0045, and this is located at 3354 Charger Drive. And it is an application for a rezone from M1 to O1, and staff has recommended to approve. And then also on the agenda is a mandatory referral, case 2024-0046, located at 3300 through 3600 block of Eastern right-of-way of Charger Drive, and it's a mandatory referral for right-of-way closure, and staff is recommended to deny. So if we could, Mr. Schultz, if you could give us the staff presentation on both of these together, that would be great. Or maybe since there's no opposition here, we'll take a motion to approve on 9, case 2024-0045, and it has been seconded. Any discussion? Yes. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then staff has recommended denying. Mr. Lyles recused himself from the vote on the mandatory referral. We have a staff recommendation to deny. And I know the applicant's present, but Mr. Schultz.
Yes, this is a MR, mandatory referral request, abandoning a portion of the right-of-way of Charger Drive, previously known as Broad Street. The CCS school is adjacent to this. They're reorganizing the school parking lot, adding some fencing along Charger Drive and a security gate into the entrance of CCS. This right-of-way is needed for that. So it's the entire length of Charger Drive from Broad Street to the north, to the south at West 37th Street. The applicant's proposal, again, is to close a portion of the right-of-way. Again, as I stated earlier, CCS plans to add security to the school with a fence around the perimeter of the campus. There's an increased need for parking at the school, street beautification on Charger Drive, and then parking lot beautification will also occur on the campus. There has been some recent closures in the CCS campus itself from 1986, as well as 1973. You can see those are interior to the site itself. Here's a closer view. This is the aerial view of the site. Again, it's institutional school use. To the north is commercial and manufacturing. To the west of Charger Drive is commercial uses and banks along Broad and Tennessee Avenue. There is some natural resources associated with this property. Here's Charger Drive, looking south towards West 37th. You can see CCS is on the left-hand side and the commercial banks and stuff on the right-hand side. It's unusual wide right-of-way through here, 80 foot. There is some questions. If you get further south, is it 60 or 80? I've seen multiple documents floating around from 60 to 80. So to me, it's not clear what it is. I believe in this section, though, it is 80. It may drop down to 60 when you get further south. I don't think any title attorney's been involved to actually do some title research. Other than some plats we found, I have some information we'll go through in a minute. But this, again, Charger Drive used to be what was called Broad Street. Again, here's another view of CCS and the entrance to the school. This is the school parking lot where it's going to be reorganized and rearranged. And this grass strip, I think, is where the 10-foot right-of-way is being abandoned. Staff, including Transportation Department, looked at this and felt the request does not meet the City of Chattanooga right-of-way closure and abandonment policy. There is not a significant private interest that offsets the loss of public right-of-way at this location, even though it's 80 foot in certain locations. This right-of-way does provide multimodal transportation service, including a sidewalk on the side of CCS. On the other side, there is no sidewalk other than one long continuous curb cuts to the back of those buildings. The site, which is the school, is approximately 40 acres in size, so the applicant can explore other avenues to enhance the parking, landscaping, and fence installation without the need to close the public right-of-way. We also noted that you could do these improvements through the use of a temporary use permit or use of the right-of-way and a hold harmless agreement with the city of Chattanooga. And then while the right-of-way is ample along Charger Drive for existing transportation assets, the South Broad and St. Elmo area is continually evolving. With railroad to the south inhibiting access, it is critical to keep this right-of-way available for future public benefit, whether a street capacity and needs for public parking change or as enhanced pedestrian bicycle connections. So staff recommended to deny. Here's the site plan or rendering, if you will, submitted by the applicant showing the 80-foot right-of-way and what's actually being closed, which is 10 foot. I think it's 10 foot wide. Is it 10 or 15? I can't remember. 15. 15. The entire length of Charger Drive. Here's a view of what that new entrance will look like going into CCS. You see the fence and the new sign. The sign is a security gate. I think this is just an aerial view showing you some of the nearby uses and traffic counts. This was provided by the applicant. I guess he can go through his information if he wants to. But again, this came from staff with a recommendation to deny this request. And then I have the applicant provided some additional information that I have in presentation today.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Any questions for staff? All right, Mr. Price.
Thank you. Mike Price, MAP engineer. So the request is here on Charger Drive, which is currently an 80-foot right-of-way for the majority of it. There is, if you look at the drawing that, Brian, you got the aerial view. If you go back to the slide that you just had, please. Yeah. Thank you. The area that's on the south, and you sort of see that green rectangular area, and that area right into there, there's some question with regards to who owns that. There seems to be proof that it's currently owned by the school and the right-of-way does not extend out to be 80 feet in that area. It's unclear. We'll have to have a title attorney take a look at it to make determination one way or the other. So just to be on the safe side, we're requesting the entire length along CCS to be abandoned in the event that that is already ours and it's a moot point, should the action be to approve it. But in the end of the game, what's being asked is to dedicate or to abandon 15 foot of right of way so that we can make improvements to CCS school. That will leave approximately 14 feet of distance within the right of way from the right of way to the face of the curb, which is sufficient room for the city to put any multimodal paths in, a verge, landscape, whatever they want to do. But at the end of the day, what we're looking for is Charger Drive. If you've been out there in that area, Charger Drive comes in, dead ends basically, I think, to 37th Street. Then from there, you got the railroad right of way. So you're not extending this road any further. It is where it is. It basically is going to dead end to 37th Street. So if there's going to be any improvements, I think that those are going to be taking place basically on Broad Street. And as it relates to the reason for this is, again, it's for us to be able to beautify the front, but also for us to be able to maximize our parking on site. We're crushed, especially during certain events at CCS. We need this additional right of way to gain additional parking in the improvements that we'll be making there within the asphalt parking lot. So as I see it, just because the city has an inordinately wide right of way doesn't mean it should stay an inordinately wide right of way. If we can ask for what would benefit the school, which benefits the city, benefits the parking, that should keep the need for any parking to be elsewhere located within the street a non-issue. So based on that, we're asking for the right-of-way to be abandoned as requested, and especially given that we think we already own the portion to the south, which would just match up and align with that. So if there's any question, be happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike, are there any federal funds involved with the project that CCS has put forward?
I don't know if those are federal or state. I'll let Bob answer that one.
State or federal?
Robert Franklin with Franklin Architects. I believe there are. This is a security upgrade for the school as well. The fence is both beautification and campus security. And they're using federal funds for that fence. Yes.
Okay. Which is probably which overshadows, I guess, the temporary use suggestion. If I've done a little bit of homework on this.
That's correct.
Okay. And I can see why you would not want to do this. So Bob, can you talk a little bit about the public safety or the student safety in this particular situation? I know that CCS is taking the safety of their students very serious, investing tremendous amounts of money into protecting that campus, given what we see happening in our world. And would you say this is a major part of that initiative?
It is the most primary reason for the fence. They're fencing the entire property around the entire perimeter of the campus. The main part that's not fenced right now is along Charger Drive. There will be a staffed gatehouse. As with other schools, the gates will be open when the students are arriving, and then those gates will close all day long. If you or I drive up at 10 o'clock in the morning, a guard will either raise the gate and let you in or lower the gate. So it's primarily a security concern, but since they're putting a fence up along a major city right of way, what we've tried to do is design something that would be an enhancement to the pedestrians that do walk down that way or might walk down that. There is an aesthetic decision to be made. Where do you put that fence? Where do you put those brick piers? CCS would like to voluntarily put in new street trees all the way down through there, like the city landscape folks would like to be done. So we think it's a significant improvement both to the aesthetics of the community, but primarily it's a security issue.
And across the street is a public transportation shelter hub. And I know for a fact on Broad Street, even getting to that on Broad Street, Brian, go back to where it showed, keep going, right there. To the right of that building, where that white car is in the picture to your right, there's a shelter for public transportation. But as you walk down the street, it's all muddy and wood, concrete, and it's not even a complete sidewalk. I would hope that the city would concentrate more on that instead of worrying about the right of way on Charger Drive, and focus more attention there in future plans. That's something I'll talk with CDOT about. Mike, you brought up the really good point about Charger Drive being a dead end, and there is no future development that I see on the CCS side, and on the right side there might be a little bit.
There could be
But I think
redevelopment.
that will be covered probably in future development.
Yes,
I would hope that the district representative for that area would argue for that.
Ms. Dotley has been, there's been conversations with her and basically I was not in those meetings, but as I understand it, she was in full support of both requests.
That's true. And she is, and I have discussed with her as well. I know that she is in full support of helping CCS create a safer environment for their students. And I would hope that the city would understand that and actually see that as a significant aspect of this. Giving a little to gain a lot is what I would say in concerns for our students. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to make a motion to approve this.
Mr. Byrd, we do have a motion to approve, and I think that was seconded. Mr. Byrd.
So I understand and appreciate that the school is trying to increase security during the school day. This application gives me a few concerns about people getting to school. I ride my bike up and down from San Elmo to get to work, and I pass kids riding their bike or walking to CCS as well. And so having sufficient sidewalks, and preferably sidewalks that aren't right next to the street like this, is important for safety, getting kids to school safely just as much as keeping them safe once they're there. And so I believe you said already the distance, but I want to clarify for the record, from the new proposed right-of-way to the face of curb, what is that distance?
It's approximately 14 feet.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
We have a motion to approve, and it was properly seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lyle recused himself.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to say that the comments on that and most of these abandonments are trying to follow an adopted, Brian looked it up, 2016 abandonment policy, which I'm assuming is pretty strict. So there's probably it's been 8 years. It's probably worth going back and looking and see if there's anything that should be tweaked in that policy. I mean, I don't know particularly how it applied to this case, but it seemed, if we think there's a need to look at it, we should probably it doesn't hurt to go back and just review it again.
Councilman Ledford.
Dan, I think that's an extremely important comment, and I really appreciate you saying that, because in this day and age, I think the safety of our citizens, our students, anytime we could take it out, I think that should be a factor into when making a staff recommendation. I would love to see that. If there's any way I can help, be part of that conversation, I'm there.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's not Brian and Emily. They support getting rid of right away.
Yeah, well, that's the beautiful thing, Dan. That's the beautiful thing about having a commission full of different temperaments, talents, convictions, backgrounds, and being able to move on to the city council for further discussion. That's the beauty of this, and that's the beauty of our systems.
And I think I think after today, echoing Dan's point, especially on these mandatory referrals, it'd be nice if we had somebody from Public Works here, or transportation, to help argue their points to why this stuff needs to be abandoned or not abandoned.
Yeah, it would be.
Well, we're going to make sure when they have positions that we might have to defend, that we're going to try to have somebody here that just doesn't make much sense.
But thank you for those comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To Mr. Price.
The only other question is, I think, are y'all going to vote on the office rezoning as part of the?
We already did.
We did that.
Okay, all right. I guess I slept through
We
that.
denied it.
It was denied.
1 for 2. Thank you.
Mr. Burke.
Are we on public comment on non-agenda items?
Yes.
Okay. To staff's point about having Public Works in the room, and also in light of the Hammerhead case that we had earlier today, when we passed the subdivision regulations last August, I think it was, we heard from staff, these are things that need to be updated continuously. We need to be continuously looking at them. I was hoping we could consider bringing Public Works back in to talk about some of these more nitpicky details. We had some emails bouncing back and forth about some discrepancies between fire code and Public Works opinion. I'm wondering if we can bring that back to the table and start talking about it again in open meeting. I think we need to be moving on that, because we're already seeing cases where it's having an impact.
Sure.
And we met with Public Works back in January on that same topic you're bringing up, Mr. Byrd, and they were supposed to be, Public Works is working on a document, I thought, to bring forth the Planning Commission on those discrepancies. I thought for February, we're now in March, so.
Well, but there would be some sort of public notice if they were bringing something on, to put it on our agenda.
Yes, if it's something on the agenda, I think they're just bringing something for discussion at lunch.
Gotcha. Okay. That's helpful. Any other public comment on non-agenda items? All right. Can I get approval of the Planning Commission minutes of February 12th? I have a motion. Can I get a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And in honor of Mr. Payne, Mr. Maybe. You've never had the opportunity? Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Mr. Payne's normally on top of that for me.